Hi, I'm Amelia Everly, coming to you from sunny Penfield High School, and today I'd like to talk to you about classroom management, the basics of it, the theories of it, and just what it is as a whole. So an overview, today we'll be talking about what classroom management is, why it's necessary, its factors, teaching styles, theories, and then just a simple conclusion. Okay, so what is classroom management? Classroom management is defined as one of two things. Usually it's defined as the actions that teachers take to establish and sustain an environment that fosters students' academic achievement as well as their social, emotional, and moral growth. It's also known as a structured learning environment with clear rules that promote learning as well as consequences that diminish or eliminate behaviors that get in the way of learning. So it is both the actions that teachers and faculty take to make sure that their classroom is happy and healthy, but also the environment that students are learning in because of the decisions that students make, faculty makes, that the student body makes, everything impacting their environment. Okay, why is it necessary? So classroom management affects a lot of things. The three main things that it affects are relationships, behavior, and empowerment. So for relationships, having a close relationship or a high level of investment in the life of your students can create a mutual sense of respect. And this leaves little to no room for a power struggle in the classroom. A power struggle is when a student feels that they don't have any power or independence in their educational environment, so they feel the need to act out, speak out, say offensive or rude things, to act out against other peers or retaliate against their educators, just to try and grasp at some sense of power in the room. Behavior. Creating, communicating, and reminding students of boundaries is one way to prevent any major harmful decisions. So not only having those boundaries and rules in place, but reminding your students continuously, making sure that they understand them thoroughly and that they are following them in a way which is respectful to both their peers and faculty. Also correcting behavior is a necessary skill, but not only correcting behavior, a week later, a day after it happens. When it happens, correcting that behavior, steering them towards something positive rather than a negative behavior, and punishing it when necessary. I wouldn't punish immediately if it's not a major offense, but warnings are incredibly effective at reminding students what is and is not appropriate in a classroom setting. Empowerment. So mutual decision making is very important. It empowers students and creates a greater sense of independence for them. So this could look like voting for what they're learning about today, in what order they're doing their projects. This could be allowing some sense of student autonomy to work with whatever partner they'd like, whatever group they'd like. Things like that can be really simple, but can really be empowering for students who otherwise feel they don't have very much power in their school environment. Most of all, student success. This is the end goal, that you have students who are question askers, who are lifelong learners, who are excited to come to school, who have good behavior, who care about their academic and social success, and that they are healthy all around. The factors of classroom management. So there are 6 main factors. There are a lot of different factors that come into classroom management, but these are the 6 big ones. So it is social dynamics, peer connection, student autonomy, teacher care and support, expectations, and behavior management. And I'd like for you to think back to a time that you saw an example of one of these things being used as a classroom management strategy in a class that you have been in. Okay. So number 1 is social dynamics. This looks like bullying, status erasure, and support for students. So the ability to recognize students who are or have been bullied or stereotyped or victimized, stepping in to defend those students, even when it's uncomfortable for you as a faculty member, can be so important. And this doesn't always have to be embarrassing or harsh on the student who may have been bullying, but it does need to hold them accountable and make them a responsible person for what they have been doing to another student. Punishment can vary with bullying and things like that. Warnings aren't always a fair decision with bullying because usually it is more harmful than a warning would fix. So sometimes sending a student to the principal or talking to them one-on-one can solve a lot of the issues that they're having, which are causing them to bully or hurt another person in their class. And then implementing a consequence based on severity, like I just discussed. Status erasure can sound like a bad thing, but it is very important in a classroom, especially in higher grades like secondary schools or high schools. So this looks like disregarding social status or popularity of students. Randomized seating can help here to promote growth in the classroom, to promote natural connection, and then group projects, again, can create new friendships that wouldn't regularly happen because of the barrier that social dynamics can have in a school body. Support, it looks like regarding every student equally, disregarding that social status, and then encouraging shy students to try and meet others. Some students can have a really difficult time with social anxiety or just shyness, so just giving them a little bit of a push can be really beneficial to them socially and in their educational growth. Okay, peer connection. This goes into three things: group work, student connection, and encouraged closeness. So group work, having it included in your course load is really beneficial. This promotes social learning, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Randomized partner and selective partners can be used to grow a classroom community. Student connection, allowing chit chat when it's appropriate is very important. This is where a boundary can come into place and be incredibly effective in a classroom setting. Having students who know when chit chat is appropriate and when it is not, listening when you're instructing, things like that. Just communicating that regularly to your students can make things go so much, it can make your classroom just flow better. It can just make things seamless and help get more material done. Whereas having chit chat always be allowed can be a distraction to peers and faculty members, and it can interrupt the growth of curriculum. So beside that, randomized seating again encourages natural connection, and then promoting or rewarding students who help others can be very important. This is often overlooked at the secondary and high school levels, but it is very important to encourage community and kindness in a school body. Okay, encouraged closeness is just, again, promoting collaboration and then pre-planning group work. Okay, number 3 is student autonomy. This looks like decision-making, rules, and responsibility. Decision-making is allowing students to collaborate with you when it comes to structuring lessons, even implementing voting. So if you have 2 options for your lesson that day, and you openly communicate with your class that those are the 2 options, having them vote and choosing whichever group has more votes, that will allow the students a sense of independence and like they have a grip on what they're going to do that day. That allows students to feel empowered in their own education yet again. Roles, allowing the class to say in what roles are necessary, and then collaborating with students again to set those boundaries can be so important. Responsibility, giving students an opportunity for responsibility is often overlooked in a classroom setting, but something as simple as letting your students choose where they sit in the classroom can make them feel like an independent learner and can motivate them to be better socially and educationally. Okay, teacher care and support. This filters into taking time, communication, and organization in the classroom. So taking time to check in on students who may be struggling is very important. But this starts with knowing your students. This starts with having that relationship with your students, being able to read body language and understand when a student may be struggling before they come to you, being able to ask a student how they're doing or what's going on, if there's an issue at home or what's happening. Just really knowing your students is so important because it can be a preventative for serious issues such as self-harm, suicidal thoughts, things like that. Even bullying can look like somebody who has just off body language for the day. So understanding your students can be a real preventative measure for harmful behavior. Also, implementing an open door policy can be very helpful. So an open door policy can look like allowing students in to sit in classes during their lunch, to work on their homework in your room after school, to just come in and chit chat with you when they need somebody to talk to. And this can be really beneficial for building community, but also trust between you and the student body. Communication, communicating openly with students, asking if they need help, practicing restorative communication, and then being responsive. So restorative communication is when something happens, such as bullying between two peers, and you have to step in to stop that bullying. You have to confront a student for their harmful behavior, and then the next day, you treat them like every other student. You aren't holding a grudge against your students, and it's just important to be professional and understanding that your students are still growing individuals. Being responsive is also a simple way that you can promote trust between yourself and your students. This can look as simple as answering emails or being interested in a conversation you're having with a student. Just being there, talking with your student, being responsive, caring about their weekend, caring about their day. It can communicate that you care and support your students. Organization, creating plans to organize work in a way which benefits students, and then organizing your room so students are familiar with it, so that students know where handouts are, where to pick up their work for the day, where to drop off homework, where they can find you at any given time, things like that. Expectations. So this is filtered into high expectations and then communication. Holding high expectations for your students and then communicating those expectations through boundaries regularly. So having expectations can look like telling your students that you know you can succeed in this subject. You know that they can do well on this exam. You know that they can do better than they've been portraying. If you see a student who is slacking, who's doing less than they usually would, asking that student if they're okay, telling them that you know that they can do it, encouraging them, and then taking the next step to find a way to further their understanding of the topic. Communication, reminding students of their expectations again, correcting those harmful behaviors when they happen, communicating that you believe in the student's ability to succeed. Number 6 is behavior management. So this filters into instruction, boundaries and rules, and consequences. Instruction is very important in a classroom setting, not only for mental growth, but also so that your students learn to be beneficial members of society at their future jobs or career paths. So communicating clear and effective instruction, making sure instructions are thoroughly understood, boundaries and rules, reminding students of their expectations. Again, I know it's repeated a lot, but it really is important in classroom management to encourage your students and let them know that you know they can succeed. Making rules, communicating them, and then setting and using boundaries. Consequences, correcting poor behavior before punishing, like we talked about earlier with the warning, making a point of sticking to the rules, and addressing problematic behaviors when they occur. So number 4, this is teaching styles and their pros and cons. There are 4 main teaching styles, and while I'm discussing this, I'd like you to think back to your time as a student and think about what teachers you saw using which teaching styles and how that affected you and your educational growth. So number 1, we have authoritarian. This is high demand and low reward. So they ask a lot of students, they don't get very much in return. Authoritative, high demand and high reward, asking a lot, receiving a lot. Permissive, low demand and low reward, asking little, receiving little. And then again, indulgent education is asking little and receiving little. So here's number 1, authoritarian teaching. I chose this graphic. It says, because I said so. I think that may remind you of a few educators or adults in your life. A lot of adults use this phrase as a way to belittle the person that they are talking to say that I'm in power and you don't need a reason because of that power. So the first definition is favoring or enforcing strict obedience to authority. Number 2, an authoritarian teacher is a teacher with total control of the classroom, usually in a highly structured classroom with strict rules. Strict punishments are also implemented. So the pros of it, it simplifies who is in charge. It's always one person in charge of a group, and there's a very clear power difference. There are clear boundaries in this classroom and high expectations, but the cons outweigh the pros. These teachers have little to no relationship with students. There's often resentment from student to faculty, and there's little to no active discussion. There's almost always a power struggle, like we talked about earlier, where students are just grasping at straws, acting out, saying offensive things to try and gain just a little bit of power they could have in that classroom. Authoritative teaching. So this one is high demand, high reward. These are commanding and self-confident teachers. They're likely to be respected and obeyed. They're always invested in success for their students, and they set and respect boundaries. Authoritative teaching. The pros, they're able to provide support for students while promoting academic success. Students feel power in decision making in the classroom, and they create a dynamic which is peaceful, informed, and respects boundaries. These teachers understand that each student is an individual, and they respect them as such. This makes it so that the teacher gains respect back from the students, and it just creates a common ground where you can really have a relationship with your students but still get things done curriculum-wise, and your students can really benefit because you still teach that lesson while having a relationship with your students, and this can further understand where a student may be. This can make the teacher able to further understand where a student may be struggling or what may be beneficial to an individual student. The cons, there's only one. It's possible intimidation with a teacher who is so strongly spoken, who knows what they want, who is demanding of their students, who knows how well their students can do. Students may be intimidated by that. It's the same as seeing someone who's really confident. You may be very intimidated by that. That's just the one con. So permissive teaching, there's very little control over their classroom and very little student involvement. They don't establish rules, and they don't punish poor behavior. So this may be known as like a lazy teacher, as you can see in my graphic there. Permissive teaching has one pro, which is that students have a large amount of say in the classroom, and many cons. Students have too much freedom, they don't grow in this space. Students often take control in these classrooms. So this may look like a student initiating a conversation with the instructor, and the instructor taking it and running, talking about this, that, and the other for the entire period rather than getting any of their curriculum-based work done. And this can lead to a very stunted classroom. Many students will have a very difficult time understanding the information given to them in this classroom because it's not openly discussed. Number 4 is indulgent teaching, which is low demand and low reward. This is a bit of a long definition. So indulgent teachers have very low control over the classroom, and they allow students freedom without boundaries. They have a very high level of involvement with their students, but they can be overly friendly. They do prepare their daily lessons, but because of their lack of control, indulgent teachers get forced off track by their students and struggle to redirect them. Again, with the conversation, the teacher may have a conversation with one student that turns into a conversation with the whole classroom, or a classroom full of individualized conversations, and they never get to the point of the lesson plan. So the pros of indulgent teaching: the students are free in the classroom. Oftentimes these teachers have close relationships with the students, but the cons outweigh the pros. There's an inability to teach proper curriculum. There are no boundaries, and there's little to no respect given to these teachers. Very little learning takes place in these classrooms. So theories. There are a couple of major theories to go over that back different types of classroom management. So number 1 is behaviorism. Number 2 is humanism. 3, cognitive constructivism. And 4, social learning. These may sound familiar to you if you've taken any of the basic education courses, because they're usually gone over in those courses. So number 1 is behaviorism. It's rooted in the work of B.F. Skinner, who you can see up at the top there. This is seen through punishment and reward systems. Operant conditioning is used, and praise is used as promotional technique for good behavior. So with this type of teacher, they think everything is based on praise or punishment. This is a type of teacher that may have some kind of reward system in their classroom, such as a sticker system where if somebody gets a question correct, you can grab a sticker. Things like that are used, but also punishment is used often in these classrooms, and sometimes it can be more extreme than it needs to be for the behavior it's trying to correct. Here's the formal definition. So behaviorism is a theory rooted in the work of B.F. Skinner, posits that human behavior can be shaped and controlled through reinforcement and punishment mechanisms. A simplification of it: people repeat the actions they are rewarded for and stray from actions they have been punished for previously. Number 2, humanism. This one is championed by Abraham Maslow and Carl Rogers. It focuses on holistic development, so development of every need that a human has. It emphasizes social and emotional needs of individuals, and it prioritizes creating a safe and peaceful environment. So here's the formal definition. Humanistic educational theories, championed by Abraham Maslow and Carl Rogers, focus on the holistic development of individuals, emphasizing psychological and emotional needs. So here you can see the triangle, and this is essentially the needs that they think are most to least important. So at the bottom, we have physiological needs, then safety needs, love and belonging, esteem, and then that leads to self-actualization of students. Number 3 is cognitive constructivism, championed by Jean Piaget and Lev Vygotsky. It engages students in critical thinking and problem solving. There's a belief that students develop ideas through experience and exploration, and it stimulates students' intellectual curiosity. So this one really promotes students' curiosity. It wants students to ask questions and grow from there. So here is the formal definition. Cognitive constructivism, as championed by Jean Piaget and Lev Vygotsky, emphasizes the role of active learning and cognitive development in education. Vygotsky's sociocultural theory underscores the importance of social interaction and cultural context in learning. The summary for this: people learn through experiences, whether it be experimentation, watching a film, reading a book, having a conversation with someone. That experience can cause each individual to grow in and of themselves through question asking, through experimental learning. There are so many different ways that students can learn through experience. And finally, social learning. This is Albert Bandura's learning theory. It recognizes the power of positive role models, recognizes the power of peer interaction, and encourages interactive learning experiences. So the formal definition: Albert Bandura's social learning theory posits that individuals learn by observing and modeling the behaviors of others. This theory highlights the significance of social influences in shaping behavior. So this theory essentially says that students learn from one another through behavior and through their own question asking. Classroom management really does matter. Classroom management is the basis of a healthy school body. It is the way that students become lifelong learners, the way that students become question askers. It's the way that teachers and students are successful in teaching curriculum, in understanding curriculum, and growing the educational basics that they have already learned. I hope that in your future careers as educators, you take classroom management seriously, that you use it in a way that benefits not only you, but your students as a whole, educationally, socially, emotionally, mentally, and physically. And I just hope that it stays at the front of your mind when you're teaching students, that this is a way that you can teach them to not only be good students, but to be good people. Thank you.